What is going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Bestial Frenzies podcast. I'm here with my Bestial Frenzy, Andy. How are you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, and I'm here with my bestial frenzy, Theo.
Whoa, it's still true after all these weeks.
It's been a couple of weeks. We've been busy, we've been tired, but we are back.
We are back, and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. It's been a busy 2 weeks in the world of GA. I think we should just dive head first. Especially, I mean, we recorded this on the perfect day. Silidar decided to go absolutely buck wild in the Discord earlier and just post. I think there were 12 spoilers just this afternoon, and then like a couple more earlier in the week.
Yeah,
So we're gonna cover all of that new stuff.
I think the total we got is it's at least 16.
Yeah, absolutely buck wild. So I think in order to cover all of them in like a reasonable amount of time, I think we should just dive head first. Um,
Yeah,
Starting with I'm gonna start big. I'm gonna start with like what I think is one of like the most exciting, and I'm gonna group these ones together. They revealed three new spirits. So these are Spirit of Serene Water, Spirit of Serene Wind, and Spirit of Serene Fire, and they all have the same effect, just like with their own element, which is on enter, glimpse 6, draw 6. So that's already like interesting and different from like the standard spirits where we have is just draw 7, and then they all have a new keyword which is called Lineage Release, and then it says recover 6. So basically what you do is you can activate that ability, you banish the spirit from under your champion's lineage, and then you heal for 6, but you are no longer that element.
yeah. So it's a really big. You're trading one card at the beginning of the game for glimpsing 6, which is really good. It's really good. I
Yeah.
think depending on the deck you're playing, it could also be really bad because in this game the cards in your hand are resources to play things.
Mhm.
So if you start with one less card, you're basically starting with one less resource than your opponent. Now, counteracted by glimpsing 6 and then later in the game recovering 6 might be worth it.
Yeah, I think like the first thing that jumps out to me when I look at these is like it's effectively like a pre-mulligan almost. Like since this game has no genuine mulligan rule, like you're stuck with the opening hand you get. So like maybe you trade off the one card if you're playing like a combo deck and you're really looking for a couple specific pieces. And you see none of them in the top 6 cards. You're like, those are going all to the bottom. I'm drawing 6 new cards. It just lets you get a little bit more dig for like the really important cards. Or another one that I thought of is like going second playing Gildas. Uh, Gildas with 8 cards in hand is really awkward because you pay 3 to player and then you have 3 in memory, 4 in hand, and it's like you really want to have a 0 cost card to play to get the balance. But glimpse 6, draw 6 means that with your draw for turn you'll be at 7, and if you glimpse 6 and you saw Gildas, you're like, oh, I'm gonna swing for 4 damage turn 1, and
Yeah,
it's pretty
it's a
good.
really good point. In burn decks, especially when you have sideboard or you have a material deck to waste, like you're rarely actually using all 12 cards. Having regular spirit and Spirit of Serene Fire in there, I mean, or any Serene Spirit, really, but it's really strong for exactly that point. And if that gives you 6 more cards to find Gildas in your opener, and 4 damage right off the bat is massive.
Yeah, it's really good, and also I mean like definitely the recover 6 is super relevant sometimes. So like I think they're very interesting cards. I really like that they have powerful effects with the trade off of drawing less. I think that's a really cool way to balance like alternate spirits, because I was really wondering like what they were gonna do for more spirits. It was like, are they gonna do some kind of, like, are they gonna do dual spirits? Are they gonna like, how are they gonna balance everything if like right now they're just a vanilla draw 7? And I think it's a really cool idea to like balance the game design by lowering the draw power by giving them bonus effects. I think it's just really neat.
Yeah, I could see this also being really good in like full combo Rye decks, where next set when you have the ties card where each player can only draw 3 cards a turn, you need to, when you're full combo and you're drawing your whole deck on a turn, you need to find your cards that actually destroy material deck cards,
Mhm.
regalia. But harder to find when you can't draw a card. But having an emergency switch, recover 6 in a deck where you're really only playing normal cards and arcane cards after a certain amount of time, and being able to find your removal cards faster really strong.
Yeah, I think another other thing this is maybe incredibly niche, but a situation where this could be super cool is if you're trying to make Trisket work, because
Yeah,
Trisket banishes your champion anyways. So if just before you do that, on the stack also banish your spirit just to heal 6, and then you replace your champion anyways, and you're like, all right, I just got the.
you full heal with Trisket anyway.
I guess that's fair,
But
but you could.
it would give you another turn to find your Trisket maybe.
Yeah, it lets you live for longer. That's just something that popped into my head. I don't know. It's I think these are gonna be really cool, and I like the implications they have for the game design. I think they're very awesome. Um,
Yeah, I agree.
all right, so next up, we've got a card called Shock Therapy. So this is a 2-cost arcane mage spell that has both class bonus and element bonus. Whenever this card is banished from your memory, put an enlighten counter on your champion. So that's like the element class bonus, and then the actual text on the card reads, deal an amount of damage to target ally equal to the amount of enlighten counters on your champion, and it is a fast spell. So you've been playing a lot of Arcane Rye recently. What are your initial thoughts on this?
So my initial thoughts on this are very specifically, I wish its first ability wasn't an elements bonus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't know everything for set 2 yet. We're really close. We're really close. But to me, once you're level 3, a lot of the time, you don't really need to kill that many allies. Hopefully, you're just trying to win really fast. And I don't think you just have that many slots, extra slots, that you would dedicate this spell to, specifically in Arcane. Like, yeah, it's cool that it provides basically what is a third of a card whenever it gets banished by like reckless conversion.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're reckless conversioning a lot, like you probably don't need this. I think this card I would list under bad right now, but
Sure. Yeah.
that is just my opinion from what we currently know.
Yeah. I think it gets a little bit of value um with like water and wind, where you don't have fireballs in addition to your other damage spells, because you're using erratic bolt as well, which also can banish from memory. So erratic
Mhm.
bolt, which also already reads banish 2 draw 2. Also, if it gives you an enlighten counter, that could be almost banish 2 draw 3 if you have enough on you already. So like I could see it going in that build. But no, I do agree that if it was just class bonus and not element bonus, it'd be really nice to like level up early on in the game with that and just get a couple bonus counters so you can draw extra. But once you're already level 3, you don't really need a single enlighten counter as much.
No, in like its effect, like, oh, you can use it to kill what is it, the majestic spirit. But if you're at a point where you have 12 enlightenment counters on your champion, you should win the game.
Yeah, yeah, that is true.
And we just got voltaic sphere.
Which
I
is
think
so
that
good.
is
The card's so
just
good.
strictly a better flex arcane spot. Unless we somehow see a deck that has like 32 arcane spells in it, I just don't know if we're going to see that. But if we do, maybe this sees a slot.
Yeah, yeah, I could see it going in, but I do think that there are other like more powerful immediate includes, and when the deck space is already tight because you're playing so many combo pieces, I think this is probably one of the ones that you say, not worth it.
Maybe the format just slows down way more than we think, and you need that level 3 single ally removal. But I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe it's even a sideboard card specifically for Majestic Spirit, and you're like, I want to kill them this turn, but they have Spell Shroud, so I need to, you know, uh, peer into mana for a bunch of counters, kill the Majestic Spirit, and then I can kill the champion. So maybe it's a
Yeah,
sideboard card, maybe it's just not quite good enough, but curious to see how that impacts the meta.
you could definitely see it as a sideboard card. I agree.
All right, up next we've got Lurking Assailant, which is a 3-cost norm ally and is a assassin human. So it says Lurking Assailant has stealth as long as it's awake, and then the level 1+ bonus is Lurking Assailant may retaliate against attackers while not defending, and it
I
has
think it's,
2 power
yeah,
and 3 health.
I think I somehow missed this card. I didn't see this at all. This is interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So hey, first reaction. What do you think?
Um, I think it's really interesting. The fact that the stealth strongest is awake, it has no class bonus associated with it.
Yep.
Um, I think it gives you an interesting, like, this is a pseudo way to protect your other allies,
Hmm.
where, oh, they can, attack into something else you have, but you can still kill what they're attacking with it. I don't know. It's really interesting. I
Yeah.
don't know what deck would play this right now.
The interesting thing
Or,
that I was looking at is that it's actually got a really good stat line for being a 3 cost because it's a two
yeah,
three, which at 3 cost is very good. I mean, I'm thinking of like that's the same attack and health as Arthur, but Arthur obviously has like the buffing ability. But like 2-3, that's like it's a pretty good stat line, and I think the ability to protect your other allies is interesting. I think it's really cool that you have like a you can retaliate while you're not defending. Like that's I don't know. I feel like this is maybe going to be one of those like judge's nightmare type cards where it's going to be like, well, what is it? What does that mean? What is? But I think that just means like when an attack that is not targeting lurking assailant happens, lurking assailant can still retaliate as long as it's awake, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's
That's how I'm interpreting it.
great. It
I
just
think
doesn't
that's
have to be the
correct.
target. Yeah. So it's interesting. I like that it's a level bonus and not a class bonus. So anybody gets to play it, and I like that it has stealth. I mean, stealth is very annoying against ally decks. I think that's maybe where its strength lies is against opposing ally decks, where they might not be able to remove this from the field, and they're trying to like attack around it, and you can still kill all their guys. Um, it also might let you if you have a couple of awake units, like sort of double up on your retaliate damage, where
Mhm.
you can retaliate with a unit that's being targeted and the assailant. So maybe if they have like 4 or 5 health, you can actually hit them for lethal damage back. It's definitely a cool card. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it will fall. I mean, this might just be one of those cards that you just can't find a slot for it, and it might never have a slot, and it's just an absolute limited all star. Like, I think this card is insane in sealed or draft.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
I
like
imagine.
probably this is like one of the best allies in the game for sealed or draft.
Yeah, and it's just a common, so you can expect to see it a lot in sealed. All right. Up next, this is also another very very exciting one for the game. This card is called Frostbind. It is a 2 cost water action that is a cleric spell reaction. And the text reads: negate target card activation unless its controller pays 2 reserve cost. And then banish the card that had its activation negated this way. So we have our first look at like what a counter spell looks like in this game.
And I think it's very balanced too, where I think this card might be a little easier to play around in the early game than people might give it credit for at first glance. You just need
Mhm.
to work on the order that you actually put things down. But late
Yep.
game, I don't know how many times somebody against me is just like, I'm going to go to level 3. I'm going to onsole with exactly 7 cards in my hand.
Hmm.
So, like, I think this card is fantastic. And I think it really protects against cards like onsole or I mean, even things like Light Weaver's Assault, where they want to play 2 of them at once, or Majestic Spirit, where they bring that out
Yep.
with I don't remember what the card is called. Incarnate Majesty. Like
Yeah.
it's just a protection against cards level 3, and also can protect you early game. Like let's say someone just like against Rush, they put 2 allies down. They go Arthur or something else. You can counter the second thing, so it's just a straight removal card.
Yeah.
I feel like this is good in just about into almost every matchup.
Yeah, and I really like how they're implementing it too. Like I think a while ago, a couple people from Yeti were like discussing what a counterspell might look like in this game and how just like a straight hard counterspell would probably be too powerful. And
Mhm.
so like the closest thing we equated this to was the card Spell Pierce in Magic, which is like just the same thing. It's like counter target spell unless they pay 2. And so it's like it I like that it's not just a strict like you can't do that. Like it just makes them work harder for it. And I agree with what you said. Like it's super good against like those high cost, like high impact cards. Like Onsol is a great example. I also think it's really good against some of those like like lower to the ground like draw combos. I'm thinking like Ascension plus Avarice. Like, if they go to play an Ascension and they've got, like 3 cards in hand and they're just trying to build up a hand, you're just like, no, I really don't want you to be drawing a bunch of cards right now. And then that might just like fizzle out their whole turn from that point. Which
Yeah.
I think is great.
No, I think this is one of those cards where the game kind of needed it to where there's a bit of a punishment for playing out your entire hand now. There's this is a card that you actually need to play around instead of just kind of solitaire versus solitaire. And I think more cards like this that aren't too powerful are incredibly good for the game. I think this is one of the cards that just water really needed. And people are going to hate this card. People always hate counters. People always hate negates in every game that they exist in. But I think when people play this, they'll realize it's a necessary evil. Like, if you're water going against Arcane Rye, full combo Rye, like, if they don't, they have to leave extra cards in their hand to Reckless Conversion. Otherwise, you can just counter the Reckless Conversion and the game's over.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of how many times when I play that deck where I like play my hand out to exactly one card, and then I'm like, great, Reckless Conversion last card, and then I'm gonna pick it up and keep going. And it's like you just can't do that if you know that your opponent is playing this card, and it like they might not even have it, but like if they're playing water and they have at least 3 cards in their hand, you have to look at your hand and be like, how do I play around the counter so that I don't lose? And they could be bluffing, which I think is also a really cool aspect of like counter cards like this.
Yeah, because it's not really that much bluffing in this game right now. There's not like, oh, does he have this in his hand? Do they have this in their hand? It's kind of you just play your game, and I think this is going to make every element feel a lot more even.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very excited to see where this card ends up.
I'm
All
glad
right.
it's not uncommon too.
Yes, yeah, right. It's not like some incredibly rare high demand card. Up next, we've got Korhazi Arsonist. This is a 3-cost fire ally. She's an assassin human. And the text on the card reads, remove a preparation counter from your champion. If you do, Korhazi Arsonist gains stealth until end of turn. And then if a unit hit by Korhazi Arsonist this turn would die, banish it instead. And she's a 2/2.
I don't know what this is supposed to be for.
Yeah, the first thing that I think of is against like specifically Swift Recruit, where they're like, I want to intercept your attack and die so that I have floating memory, and you can be like, nah, you're banished. LOL. But her stat line is too low to like, and the effect she like it has to die the same turn that she hits into it. So it's either retaliate or attack damage, and it's like I don't know. Like for bigger targets, are you attacking into them and then finishing them off with a spell? Or are you finishing them off with another attack? Like, yeah, I'm not super sure exactly where she fits in.
I'm trying to. This might just be me not being able to remember the card pool. What is actually beneficial to you to banish? Like,
So
what do you want banished instead of actually dead?
So I can think of in specific matchups against like Fire Lorraine, if they're playing Fire allies down, by killing them, you're powering up their Rending Flames. And then there's also obviously like the ally floating memories. I think are the biggest ones, so like Flame Rune Swordsman, Swift Recruit, etc. Like those I think are like the immediate targets. But outside of that, I think it's just like against Erupting or against a Rending Flames deck. Like if they're playing Fire allies, those get banished. It kind of hurts their game plan a little bit. But otherwise, it's kind of hard to because there's not really like graveyard recursion in the game quite yet.
I guess you could kill Misfound Cutthroat.
Yeah, right. You could permanently remove Cutthroat. I guess another one I just thought of was Arima, because
Oh
when
yeah,
when
yeah.
Arima dies, it gets put back in memory. But if it gets banished instead of dying, it that won't
That could
trigger
be
its
relevant.
clause. Um, yeah,
Um,
I like the pseudo protection effect she has on her. Preparation counters are weird though because there's not a lot of ways to gain them in like an efficient manner.
yeah, and
So
then like a rush deck where you would really want to like you have a like a reason to protect this ally because it keeps a 2/2 on the field. you usually want to use those counters to like deal more damage with
Yeah,
like
like the ignited stab is the first one I'm
yeah.
thinking of. Like prepared ignited stab is a 1 cost 4 damage immediately. Assassin's Ripper plus Rending Flames is another like very obvious one that like super buffs your rending. So like unless there are more ways for fire to generate preparation counters or like specific allies that you feel really need to be banished instead of sent to grave, I'm just not sure where her spot fits in.
Yeah, and I know I'm going to feel extremely dumb because I know the moment we're done with this, I'm going to be like, "Oh, you want this card banished for sure." And I just can't really think of one that has like a massive advantage for you to actually get rid of. But I know the moment we're done, I'm going to think of something.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those cards that I think in the future is great to keep an eye on because as soon as we start getting more and more cards that have grave effects, especially allies like I know Mistbound Cutthroat is like the one we have right now where she can recur herself. Um, but like maybe in the future we've got more things that are like when this when this card dies, it does this. I guess actually that's maybe something. It gets around on death triggers
Oh, true.
because it's not being sent to grave. So like you could kill a library witch with this, and they wouldn't get to draw a card.
I
That's
knew we would
maybe
figure
something.
something out. I knew there
Yeah,
was a
right.
reason.
We just had to talk about it for a second. So yeah, you can avoid on death triggers by killing stuff with arsonist. Um,
Okay, I mean, I can see it. I like it. I like it a lot better now.
great. All
I
right,
think
we
it's
covered
probably
it.
a sideboard card,
I
if
agree.
anything, right now. But we might see some janky fire lists that play just like two of these just to cover your bases.
Yeah, I think it's a decent card, and it's also got a pretty good stat line for a pretty good cost. 3 cost 2/2s is decent. It's got the same stat line as Cemetery Sentry, and Cemetery Sentry is a card that I always put in my fire list. Then I'm like, too expensive for a 2/2, and then I take it out. Um, so I like I like what she's got going for her. I think she's got potential for sure.
Hmm.
All right, up next we have Intrepid Spearman. Which is a 4 cost wind ally who's a warrior human, and she has a level 1 plus bonus that just says the first time attack damage would be dealt to Intrepid Spearman each turn, reveal a card at random from your memory. If that card is wind element, prevent 3 of that damage. And she's a 2/2 as well.
Interesting. That's another
Yeah.
card that's interesting. I think it might be a little too expensive
Mm-hmm.
for a
4 cost
2/2.
2/2 is like what I was just saying about Cemetery Sentry. Is like every time I play it, I'm like, that's too expensive for that payoff. But I can see her comboing very well with like Phalanx Captain and Banner Knight, and like you buff her damage up, and all of a sudden she's hard to remove from attack damage. But I'm a little worried at 2 health that she's very susceptible to creative shock pings, sparkle light, even like freezing hail gets there. Like there's a lot of ways to deal 2 non-attack damage, and since her effect only protects her from attack damage, if you're relying too much on trying to like keep these alive over and over again through preventing damage, you might be very susceptible to spells.
Yeah, and maybe she has a place in like a pure ally Windrush deck, and maybe there's a space for that. But the other thing she does protect herself from is cleaves pretty
Cleave. Yep.
well. But if only specific cleaves, like it's like against Hurricane Sweep, it's really good. But
Yep.
against something like Flame Sweep, it's already doing 5 damage, which is
Yeah.
enough to actually kill her.
Flame sweep
Unless
is
you
strong
have like
enough.
something to buff yourself, but at 4,
Yeah.
it's just hard to leave that up, especially if your game plan is to go aggro.
Yeah. And like I think, she's gonna have direct comparison to other 4 cost allies, and I think Wind has like the premier 4 cost ally being Tactful Sergeant. I guess aside from Arthur. But like she's gonna have direct comparison as being she only has 1 extra damage in exchange for 2 less health. And she doesn't draw you a card. She just protects herself. And like Tactful Sergeant is already pretty hard to get off the field, just like without committing into it. And so I feel like when looking at deck space, I'm like, she might make the cut again. Like if we're playing like pure Wind Humans Rush, and you get to cut a lot of the Crux cards that like Lorraine is playing. I guess also her effect is not a class bonus; it's a level bonus. So
Mhm.
she can be played in other Wind decks, um, which is definitely relevant.
But what keeps screaming out to me is I think this is a limited all star. I think this card is maybe one of the best cards in limited.
Yeah, like impossible to get off the field in sealed.
Yeah, like you have to commit two to it. That's a lot for a 2/2. And I'm sure in limited, usually there's something else you want to kill that's a lot easier to kill. So
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I like it.
Yep.
I mean, it is. No, I just like it. It's really cool. One thing to keep in mind with it too is it's not optional. It's always the first attack damage. So if you swing
It's
into
true.
this with like a Sword of Seeking for one, they have to do it,
Yeah, that
and
is
then
true.
your next swing gets through.
Yeah, so you could always like try to poke at it for one with a small attack first, and then you know that your bigger attack is not getting prevented. Because it is just three of that damage. It's not like the next three damage. It specifies the damage from the attack that is taking. So
Mhm.
that is a good point to make. Yeah, no, I like this card. I think it's interesting. I think it's a decent option for wind decks. I like allies that can protect themselves because right now, allies tend to not stick around very long. It's like you play one down, you get its damage immediately, and then your opponent's like, get rid of it. And like they usually don't have to commit too hard to get rid of stuff. So I like forcing them to put a couple cards into it. I like that a lot. All right. Up next, we've got Scatter Essence, which is a 2-cost wind action, which is a cleric spell that simply says destroy target Fantasia, and then it is a floating memory.
It's okay.
Sideboard card,
It's
maybe.
incredibly a sideboard card because you can't play this unless you're killing a Fantasia. So
Yep.
if your opponent doesn't have a Fantasia down, you can't play this card, which is fine. In this game, tech cards are cool because you can still just use them as resources, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't use it as you're floating. Like, I just really don't know how often this is going to come up. I think this is just purely a sideboard card. To
Yeah, I,
where
I think.
this, if this does get off, if you do cast this, you kill a resource. Like
Mhm.
this is like, since it's floating memory, it replaces itself, so it's a 0, and you kill a resource there, so it's a 1. So it's a 0 for 1, which is fantastic. But you need to make sure you're going against a deck that actually is playing those
Mhm.
cards.
Yeah, the thing that I think of first is if Tamer becomes very good. I know there's a couple of very strong Fantasias in that deck that like give their animals and their beasts like bonus stats and extra effects. And so if like Sylvie becomes a really dominant threat, and you're like, man, all those buff spells keep like absolutely destroying me, you can use this to destroy some of those Fantasias. Like that's the first like counter that comes to mind, but it's like it's so risky to mainboard it because it could just be completely dead. And if you're factoring this into like your floating memory count, it's like if you're not able to play it ever, it's like only a floating memory sometimes. Wind doesn't really have the ability to just discard cards either, so it's
It's a very risky main board. It's very high reward because if you see it, if you kill something, it's huge. That's enough to maybe turn the tide of a game if you're playing like more aggressively. But if they don't put one down, or they think you're gonna like, because there's also the counterpoint where if you know your opponent's gonna side this in, you can just side your Fantasias out.
yeah, that's true. And also, I didn't mention this before. It's slow speed as well, so
Yeah.
it's not a fast speed, but which is it's fine. Doesn't really change much. Um, but yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think like the card's fine. In the matchups it's good in, it'll be very good. In the matchups it's not good in, it'll feel so bad to play. So I think that just is the definition of a sideboard card.
hmm
Um, and I think it'll be very, very dependent on what the meta looks like to see whether or not this card gets much play.
Yep. I agree.
All right. Moving on, we've got Cunning Broker, a 2-cost Norm ally who's an assassin human. He has stealth, just naturally, and then he has an effect. You can rest him to get this effect, and it says remove 2 preparation counters from your champion, draw a card. He's a 0/3.
I think this card's sweet.
Mhm.
I think this card's really cool. I know we were just talking about how hard preparation counters are to get on your champion, but there's another card that we're going to talk about in just a minute that puts preparation counters on your champion every turn.
Yep.
And it's just a 0/3 stealth. It's really awkward because this avoids creative shock. So I
Yep.
mean, you could get eaten by Sparklight, but there's not that much that just does a straight 3 damage into you. You still get killed by Cleaves, but this might be a card you just don't play until you actually can draw, and then you can take advantage of it. So you
Mhm.
don't give Lorraine, the a flame sweep draw.
Yeah.
I think this is really cool. I think this might actually just be the card Assassin needs to, you know, continue just drawing every turn, giving yourself that kind of card advantage.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest thing that it does as well is it makes playing a card like strategic planning not feel as bad, because strategic planning is like, you get a preparation counter and you get to glimpse, but like you don't actually get any card advantage off of it. But if you have like one of these guys sitting on field, you can actually just use that prep counter immediately to draw cards. So you kind of get to do like what Rye does almost with like their Scry the Skies and their idle thoughts, where they idle thoughts for 4 and they go, I want that card in my hand, and then they just draw it. Um, and I like that, if you see a couple of these, and you've got, I know there's a couple of the Luxem cards have like actually generate a lot of prep counters towards the end of the game. And it's like, if you just have like 2 of these on board and you play one of those cards, like you're not really using your prep counters for anything else. So you might as well just rest these guys, draw a couple extra cards, and it's just like free cards whenever you have counters. So
Yeah, this card should definitely replace itself. It should end up probably being a +1 to a +2. Then, if the matchup is slow enough, I think this card actually just wins you the game against a lot of things. Like
Mhm.
it makes your uncover the plots draw you an extra card essentially.
Yep.
And it's like they kind of have to use their resources to kill Cunning Broker instead of going at your face, or you're just gonna just draw extra cards every turn. It's gonna be really annoying. I think this card's great. I would, if we were rating out of 10, I think I'd give this card probably an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I like the interesting thing about it is because he's a 0/3, it's like, you, as the opponent, you don't really want to kill him because he's not like actually applying offensive pressure to you. But when he's just like drawing like even one card every other turn, and you're that's too many cards. You're getting too many cards there. But like he's not doing damage, so like, you put him down immediately, and they might not be like, yeah, I need to get rid of that guy right away. And like you said earlier, if you just already have 2 counters on you when you put him down, he just immediately gets value. And then you're like, if you kill him, it's whatever. He already replaced himself. It was just at that point, it was just a clumsy apprentice. But I like him. I think it's a very good card.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I'll real quick get over to the card that we were also talking about that like sort of combos with this guy. So this is Windwalker Boots, which is a 0-cost wind regalia item. So this is a regalia card, and it is an assassin accessory. Class bonus: at the beginning of your end phase, if your champion is awake, put a preparation counter on them. So basically, the effect that Tristan has. And then it also has a banish effect, which you can banish Windwalker Boots, draw a card, and then activate this ability only if your champion has 5 or more preparation counters on them.
Yeah, I think this card's sweet. Also, it cost, you said it costs 0,
Mm-hmm.
so you're really starting to get stuff right away. Gets you preparation counters to begin your end step. I mean, I don't think Tristan necessarily is good enough to not play Luxem, but perhaps in the future with this card, getting 2 prep counters a turn, that gives you options to actually use Tristan's, effect. So which
Yeah.
is pretty powerful. And if you don't remember what Tristan's effect is, it's on ally hit, remove 3 preparation counters from her, and if you do, destroy the hit ally. If the meta shifts to more powerful, like big allies and less small things, I could see Control Tristan being played.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like, and if you just with Tristan and Windwalker Boots out and one cunning broker, It just means at the end of each of your turns, you get to draw a card if you want, if you don't have anything else to use the counters for.
Yeah, and if
So
you're playing control, that kind of card advantage is exactly what you want. Where if you're drawing 2 cards a turn and your opponent's drawing 1 card a turn, and you can kill any ally very, very easily, I could see it. I could see Control Tristan actually being played.
yeah, and
Maybe
like
not
on
this set. She might need a little more, but maybe next set.
yeah, and like I also think like Wind Assassin has access to Bushwhack Bandit, so you have the critical keyword, which means that you could be doing a lot of early pressure and like forcing your opponent to maybe discard resources that they don't want to. And if you're generating a lot of prep counters, we might actually see use of coup de grace, because you need to. That one is what, prepare 4.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for a double.
but your opponent might be sitting there like, if I don't discard 4 cards from my hand, I'm going to take 8 and probably more damage if you have like an Assassin's Ripper, and it's like, that's a lot of damage. So I could definitely see like a very grindy gameplay style that you just like end up killing them in one turn with a coup de grace. It's crazy to think that card might actually see play.
No, for sure. I know I keep, Tristan might be a meme. It might just simply not be good enough. But I think this card specifically, the pieces are kind of there for it to maybe be good because, you have Ensnaring Fume, which just
That's true.
protects you for a turn, basically. You have Arrow Trap all of a sudden, which just destroys an ally for 2. Like, you're getting a lot of good removal cards and ways to draw them.
Yeah, yeah. I think Wind Assassin is looking like it has a lot of really nice tools, which is great because Wind Assassin right now feels like horrible to play.
No, it's really bad. I know some people have lists, but it just feels awful.
Yeah, it just
But
feels
this
could be the tools it needed.
it
It
could be
could
the
be
tools that need
exactly
it.
what it needed. All right, we still got a couple more to get through. Oh my gosh, we still have a whole bunch more to get through. All right, we've got next. We have Wind Rider Invoker, a 3-cost wind ally, a mage human, and she says on enter you may remove 2 enlighten counters from your champion. If you do, draw a card, and Wind Rider Invoker gets +3 damage until end of turn. And she's a 1/2.
I don't like this card at all. I don't think this card's very good.
I think that the one upside is that you get a draw off of 2 enlighten counters rather than 3. So, you sort of get to cheat the 1 counter that way. And then she becomes a 4/2 for 3. Which is pretty decent, but it's only on the turn that she comes into play. And then after that, she's just a 1/2. She's Lorraine food. She doesn't do anything special. I guess maybe if you're trying to do Wind Mage Rush.
Maybe. What I was thinking is maybe you go Wind Spirit into Rye and then into level 2 Lorraine or Mordred. And you just like,
I can see it.
you have a. I mean, it's kind of a second Gildus if you go into
Rye level
into
1.
Rye and
Yeah.
it draws you a card. Yeah, maybe this card's okay. I just don't know if Rye Wind Rush is
Yeah.
what it is.
The other thing that I can immediately think of with this card is, since Wind has a lot of bounce effects, where you can maybe get value out of the unenter effect, do a bunch of damage, draw your card, and then bounce it back to your hand with like Disorienting Winds, draw another card. And if you're level 2 right at that point, you can like generate your counters from playing your mage actions, and then you just kind of like keep poking for 4 damage every turn. Like, I could see something like, I like that it draws you a card for 2 counters. Like, I think that's the biggest piece, is that like it draws you a card. Because if it was just the bonus damage, I'd be like, eventually you'd run out of cards to keep playing like this combo with. But yeah, I don't know. I think she's just maybe in the wrong class, it feels like, for now.
I think it's really close. I mean, with said two, I'm really excited because I think there's a lot of things to try. I'm not the kind of person, and especially you're not the kind of person. We're not the kind of people to where we're gonna just not build a deck or not try something because we're like,
Oh yeah,
this is conventionally bad. Innovation is created through doing things unconventional. And I will try Wind Rye. I'll try it. I don't think it'll work. It might be a waste of my time. but I'll try it. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know if
mean,
this card is good enough to do just that, but
Wind,
try it.
like the one thing that I can see that Wind has going for it, especially with the mage cards, is that they have a very good ability to generate enlightenment counters. Yeah, because you have like your Zephyr assistance, which you can keep bouncing in and out with all the bounce spells. You've got just like Channel the Wind as a generic floating memory, not generic wind floating memory, that just gives you a counter. So like you have the ability to get a lot of counters this way. You when playing this deck, so like maybe being able to like use those encounters cheaply to draw, and you just get a lot of poke damage in. Because I think a while ago I was trying a Windry build before sort of all these like combo rise sort of started like showing up, so it didn't really use like the pure into mana reckless engine. And like the thing that version of the deck struggled with was just like ending the game. It was
Mhm.
like you end up poking for like 1 damage every turn with a Zephyr assistant. You're like, that's just not enough. So like maybe with a card like this, you actually have the capacity to end the game faster, and you have like a little bit more room for a slower paced mage deck, like a little bit more mid rangey because you have a lot of disruption in Wind, and she's just like a good tool to draw a card and also poke for good damage. I don't know. I could see her maybe working. I don't know if it's gonna be a tier 1 deck, but I could see it functioning at least. I mean, 4 damage is a lot of damage. So
Yeah, maybe you just Zephyr Assistant. You're suppressing it. You're bouncing. That gives you those enlightenment counters, and then you reclaim Wind Rider Invoker. Yeah. Oh, who knows? Who knows?
yeah, she's playable for sure. Playable for sure. We'll see. We'll see.
Leave Merlin. Leave Merlin.
Yeah, it's great. It's incredible. Probably, maybe. All right. Up next, we've got Beast Soul Visage, which is a 0 cost fire regalia item tamer accessory, and it has ally link. So just a refresher on that. The ally link says this object enters the field linked to a target ally. If the link is broken, sacrifice this object. And then the text on the card reads: linked ally gets +2 damage, has Pride 3, and is a beast in addition to its other types. So +2 damage, Pride 3, you're a beast.
Interesting card.
Yeah.
Um. So the first thing that stands out to me is maybe you put it on like just one of your guys. It just gives you an extra 2 attack. Sometimes that's enough. Another way I think this would be very interesting to use is against burn decks, and you put it on their allies.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can make that so they can't attack with one of their allies until they're level 3, which they just won't get to because they're a burn deck. I hadn't even
Yeah,
thought of that.
yeah, being able to just like get that out. I could see that being its primary use. Um, Now is that enough to actually make your main like your main 12 plus 6 is your main 72? I don't know, but I think it's a little more of a versatile card than just I'm giving something to attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, if you're looking at it from the I'm giving something to attack, I think actually the bigger thing is that you make it a beast,
Yeah.
because that gives you access to. I'm gonna plug the
Say
podcast,
it.
Bestial
Say it.
Frenzy. you can use Bestial Frenzy on whatever you target with this card. So there may be some like fire allies that you want to play in like an ally based fire deck that you're playing Tamer, and you're like, this card is not a beast. Um, the other thing it combos really well with, again, because it gives you the beast like card type, is Young Beast Bonder, where you can take one of your allies, turn it into a beast, give it +2, and then you play a Young Beast Bonder and give it +2 buff counters, and all of a sudden in a single turn you've given it +4 attack, +2 health, and depending on what you're targeting with that could be huge.
Especially if it has like stealth or something. Like there's not that many things in the game that can get rid of a big stealth unit.
Yeah. And also, like, with the beast typing on the card, all the tamer cards that say like if you control a beast ally or if you control an animal or beast ally, it does mean that if you have a board that doesn't have any beasts on it, you could basically force yourself to have a beast so that some of those other passive effects actually like apply.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a pretty decent and pretty good versatile card for Fire Tamer. There's going to be a lot of competition for which is the best Tamer deck because A lot of cool new tamer cards are coming out, but a lot of them are element restricted. So it's gonna be interesting to see if this card makes fire worth it over some of the other tools.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. Where Setsu's so cool. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it really is. All right, up next, we've got Innervate Knowledge, which is a 4-cost water action mage spell, and just says, as an additional cost to activate this card, de-level your champion and recover 5, and then draw 2 cards. So we've already seen Innervate Agility is the wind version of this, de-level, recover 5. That one gives your units either stealth or spell shroud. This one says draw 2, and it's a 4-cost. What are you thinking about this?
I like that it recovers. I like that it essentially replaces itself. It draws you 2 cards. That's good enough. No, I think it's really good. It's slow, isn't it?
It is slow, yeah.
It's the only thing I'm not in love with, but when it gets right down to the nitty gritty, like there's not that much in this game where you want to do that fast speed, except for like leaving a counter spell up. But now that card costs 2 and you're drawing 2 cards, Frostbind is pretty sweet. The reason I'm assuming it's not fast is so you can't do it pre-recollection.
Yeah, I was also thinking like you maybe wait till your opponent, the end of your opponent's turn, you de-level, recover 5, draw 2, and then you go to your turn, you level back up and get your effect again. It's like you can
Yeah,
kind of do it all with no punishment.
yeah.
Like I think that
I,
might be a little
I
bit too
do
strong.
good with that. But I think it's pretty solid. I could see this being really good in something like a water, if like just off the top of my head, like Water Merlin level 3. You can de-level, recover your 5, draw 2, and then banish a card from your opponent's graveyard if you need
Hmm.
it. One thing that will probably not come up very often, if ever, is but you actually need 5 damage counters on you in order to use this card. Since
Oh,
recover is a
interesting.
cost, you can't recover 3 and then do it. You have to recover all 5.
Yeah, yeah. You have to recover 5 to de-level. Interesting.
Number one
I
side.
hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, I guess that's why you're the big boss judge, right?
But what do you think of the card? I think it's cool. I think it's good.
I think it's good. I really like these effects. The de-level, recover 5. It's more healing. Uh, de-leveling is really cool. It potentially lets you like abuse some on enter effects. Like the just having de-level almost makes me think like um the stealth spell shroud Xander could potentially see some play. Or even the Terra Sylvie that fetches a Terra Element Beast card from your deck when she's played. It's like you can maybe abuse some of those effects, even maybe like Lorraine 2, right? Like you can go to Lorraine 2, get a kill, draw a card, de-level to 1, draw 2, and then on the following turn level back up to 2, kill some stuff, draw another card. Like I really like that you can like reuse some of those like once per game effects almost.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's good. I think the 4 cost makes it feel balanced. It's not like you can just kind of do this whenever. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's sweet. I don't know if it's a 4 of, but I could see it being like a 2 of in a lot of things. Recover 5 is like really strong.
Yeah,
Healing in this game is incredibly powerful.
yeah. That's like an entire turn worth of chip damage from certain decks. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right,
Uh,
what we got?
Up next, we've got this one I'm very excited about. Avatar of Gaia. This is a 1-cost Terra unique ally tamer avatar, which has ally link. So again, you play her on the field, you link her to target ally. Class bonus preserve. So whenever she dies, she gets put back in your material deck, and then instead of materializing, you can choose to add a preserved card back to your hand. And then she says, linked ally has taunt and loses pride. She's a 0/2.
Yeah. So
This is
first thing
cool.
that comes to mind is, oh my god, you can do stuff with Furnace.
Yep.
You have that Pride 10 ally that buffs all your dudes. It's an 8/6. That's the first card that comes to mind. Is it circumvents Pride 10, which is just impossible.
Hmm.
But another thing to keep in mind with this is this is an ally. It has 2 health. It dies to Creative Shock, dies to Sparkle Light.
Yeah.
Um, but the question you got to ask is this worth actually having in your deck. Oh, because costing one doesn't mean anything for the most part, but costing, a slot in your deck is expensive. And I just don't know if this is worth being able to attack with Virtus for 8.
Yeah, I think like the other, I mean, like has taunt and loses pride is I think interesting because you can already like I think giving something big like Virtus taunt is really cool because it does at least protect her from like attack based damage. But I
Mm-hmm.
think having 2 health is just so low. I mean, she just dies to everything. I mean, not attack damage because something has taunt on the field, but like any cleave can just kind of blow right over her. Like you said, creative shock. I mean, Sparkle Light gets there even without class bonus. Like planet explosives, Zephyr. Yeah, right. You could just remove it from the field. Um, most of the wind spells just bounce stuff. Like you just clear it, and all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. Like I think it's really good in theory, but in practice it might just not quite be enough. It might just
Yeah,
not be worth it. I think.
that's kind of how I'm feeling. I think this card might have more potential in the future. Maybe set 3, we see more cards. But right now, it's just I just like Sylvie as it sits, and even with set 2 stuff, I don't see getting to level 3 that often with a lot of cards in their hand to the point where they can play something big with pride and this. Because the
Mm-hmm.
problem is this is Terra. You have to be level 3 to play this.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I will say I do really like that it has Preserve. It's another card with Preserve on
Mhm.
it. Which, if we do recall, Crawl actually has like the condition of needing to banish preserved cards for it to
Yep.
come in the field naturally. I know, like a lot of the times, you're probably trying to cheat Crawl out with Hymn of Gaia's Grace, but this is just another card that does have Preserve, and she is a high priority target. So that's a nice thing too. You can play her on the field. You can give taunt and lose pride to one of your other creatures, and then if they kill her, it's like it's whatever. I'll just use it as a resource later to put Crawl on the field. So I do really like that aspect of the card. We'll see if that's
And,
enough to make me think that you know she's worth playing, but I don't know.
and
I
maybe
think
you're overthinking it. Maybe it's just good enough as giving something taunts.
yeah, it's true. Because that is the nice thing is that it is since it's a Terra card that gives you taunt. I think the other one that we've seen is water specific.
Hmm.
So it is a way to just give taunt to any tamer deck that in any Sylvie deck gives you access to taunt. So maybe they'll show one more ally that is like absolutely crazy with taunt on it that is like Sylvie specific. But um, I don't know. I'm not too sure about this one.
Not too sure, but worth keeping an eye on. At worst, it's a waifu.
It's true. Worse, it'll be an expensive card.
And
Maybe a CSR in the future. Who knows? All right, and we've got our last 3 spoilers from today.
I think these
Uh,
are all really
these are
well. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
2 of them are good. I think 2 of them
yeah,
are really good.
yeah. Let's start with Crimson Protective Trinket. This one is a 1 cost Norm Regalia item, cleric accessory, which reads: Banish Crimson Protective Trinket. Target opponent reveals 2 cards at random from their memory. Banish each wind element card revealed this way. So you've got some wind hate. You can basically rip some of their hand. You can weaken their Veiling Breezes, um, stuff like that. What do you think about this one?
I think this card is incredibly strong. Um, it by itself makes Windcutter a lot weaker because it
Mm-hmm.
guarantees you have wind in your memory, and a lot of the time you don't play other things after that. But it costs 1, which it should. It really should. So it might be a 1 for 2 or even a 1 for 1. But usually in the matchups that happens, that is a positive for you. Like if you're going against like Rush, they generally need those cards in their hand more than you do. So going 1 for 1 there, or 1 for 2 might just be able to win the game on the spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think yeah. I mean, it's really good. Obviously, like ripping cards from your hand in every game is very good. In this game, especially when your resources are also the number of cards in your hand, it also says like destroy 2 resources. Um, I think it's really interesting. I think another like cool thing about a card like this is that you don't have to use it the turn you put it into play. So you can put it into play and just, look at your opponent and be like, just so you know, at any point in time when you play like a specific card, I'm gonna pop this and you're gonna banish your entire memory. And maybe even you catch them slipping. They play Dungeon Guide for 3. They use
Yeah,
wind cards. You pop this, you banish 2 of their cards, and their Dungeon Guide can't resolve. And you're like, should have played
yeah.
around it, right? Like you
Because this
can,
isn't slow. You can do this anytime.
yeah. So I think it's really, 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 really interesting and really cool, and a very powerful effect. Uh, I'm excited about this card. It's very good.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really cool. I could I'll save that thought till we're done
All right, all
because
right.
it has to do with the other 2 cards we're about to spoil as well, or not
Yep, yep, yep.
spoil, but
Not spoil,
review.
but just review. Yeah, yeah. So up next, we've got Azure Protective Trinket, 0 cost norm regalia item, cleric accessory, with the effect banish Azure Protective Trinket, and then banish up to 3. Banish up to 3 target fire element cards from a single graveyard.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think my initial reaction, I think, is this card is very good.
Mhm.
Because it lets you banish floating memory. It lets you banish fire cards. Weaken Rending Flames, weaken Erupting Rhapsody, weaken Fiery Momentum. The real question is this better than Nullifying Lantern? Kind of, because it permanently banishes them. So if they remove the Nullifying Lantern, they're still down 3 cards.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other question you have to ask is this worth like in lists in decks like Lorraine, where your material deck is very tight. Is this better than just playing raccoons?
Right.
Maybe.
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 Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure. I'm not convinced at this moment that this is going to get sideboarded a lot in place of like Nullifying Lantern.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see it. I can see
Yeah.
it. It really depends on how the meta develops. Because if stuff like Erupting Rhapsody and Rending Flames and Fire Momentum just like get relegated to like tier 2, tier 3, I don't think this is worth a spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it very specifically counters those decks or like those cards, versus like the one that hits wind like hits any wind deck, and the one that we're going to review in a second hits any water deck. So it's like this one's very specific into certain cards that it's trying to counter. Um, so I agree that I think it's very dependent on like what the format looks like to see whether or not this will be played. I don't know if it ever like takes a spot over Nullifying Lantern. But there's also maybe like if you're against erupting, I think like specifically the situation I have in my head is like you play Nullifying Lantern, it's on the field for a couple turns. Eventually they spurn dash it because they're like I'm gonna combo next turn, I'm gonna kill you, and then on your following turn you get this card, and then you also continue to neuter their damage that way. So it's like double protection. Um, but also like that might be a little bit wishful thinking to think you'll actually like survive that many turns against like a rush deck like that. So I don't know. I definitely think this is like the weakest of the 3 trinkets, which is why I'm saving the next one for last.
Mm.
But it's very situational. But I think that's also fine. It's also probably fine as a sideboard card, right? I mean, people are already siding Nullifying Lantern, and so like this is maybe like a matchup specific card you put in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it might just be that extra card you need to like really just kill Erupting too. Like maybe they can deal with your Lantern, but maybe they can't deal with 2 or this as well, or maybe they can't deal with this and raccoons, and maybe Erupting Rhapsody is just an unplayable card next set.
Cope. Um, all right, and then finally from today's spoilers, we've got Viridian Protective Trinket, 0 cost norm regalia item, cleric accessory. I'm not going to read the exact text on this card because it actually already received a preprint errata. So this card will, yeah, right. Tisk tisk. This card will effectively just read, during your turn, water element cards your opponents activate cost 2 more to activate. Is a static effect while it's on the field.
It's cool.
It's cool.
I think I like it. It counters the counter spell a little bit and makes their counter spell cost 4 instead of 2, which is a
A
lot.
lot. I think it turns
Um,
stuff like Shroud and Mist in a non-assassin deck to 7. In Assassin, it makes it a 5 cost again. It puts Water Barrier at a 5 cost. Revitalizing Cleanse at a 7 cost. Like,
you
yeah,
know,
like,
it's
it's
a
hard.
lot. It is. I think it's probably pretty good. I think this is just a straight sideboard card.
Mm-hmm.
Unless
Yeah, I would
you're
agree.
really really afraid of counterspell, like if you're like an onsole deck or something. But even then you don't want it in the main because you have so many swords.
Yeah, you need all your
It's weird.
swords.
It's weird, but I think this is a sideboard card. If you're a combo deck, if you have to play really hard around counterspell, I think you play this card.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
I
really good in like Turbo Windrai, where you can just
Sure.
pull
Yeah.
this out as you're comboing, and they have to be leaving 5 cards up in their hand all the time, and they can't pressure you if they're doing that.
Yeah, and I think it's also in rush decks, lower to the ground rush decks that have the space to do it, where like the thing you're most scared of is like Shroud and Mist. Like if you have a lot of allies, you're like, I really don't want you to shroud me. It's just like a way to say like, there's no way you have 8 cards in hand or 6 cards in hand for an assassin deck. It's like you're not using shroud this turn. Um, the thing about it being a static effect while on the field is that it can be destroyed or countered. And since obviously you're only playing this card against a water deck, I think the biggest thing that they have to hit it is Fracturize.
Yeah,
So water does have a card that they're probably already playing either in main or side, um, that is a straight counter to this because it just turns it into a fractal that just has reservable and no other text on it. But at the very least, you force them to have that card, and it gives you a resource every
yeah,
turn. So
gives you a resource. Yeah, I still think this card's really good. Like you said, there's definitely counter to it, but I think this card might be the strongest of the 3, just
I
because
would
like
agree. Yeah.
when one you can play around, you can bait them into going into norm, or like the fire one that's like it doesn't hit like every fire deck. It's only very certain ones that might not even be good next set. This one, on the other hand, really, really hits water. And with the direction we're seeing water getting more powerful cards, I think this card is needed. And I think it's really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like the design space. I don't think it kills water at all. I think they have counterplay to it, and also like a lot of the cards that like it only affects the cards they activate on your turn. So like
Yeah.
when they're trying to play fast cards on your turn, so like they can still get a lot of value out of stuff like Revitalizing Cleanse at their own turn, not costing 7. Like they can still play their cards, and they can still like Fracturize is only a 2 cost. So if they play it on their turn, it still only costs 2. They can like nuke this thing. So I like it. I like it a lot. I really think these are all very interesting cards. I like that they're introducing more specific counter cards, because sideboards right now are all like a little bit weird, and you're like, what am I trying to sideboard for? Like it's hard to sideboard for a specific matchup with a whole bunch of generic cards. So I think like these kind of really flesh out what your side looks like. If you're really afraid of water, then you like this is definitely an include in your side.
I agree completely. I think it's really sweet.
All right, so I think that finally covers all of the cards that were revealed today. That's the cards they revealed today. A lot of really, really, really cool stuff. If you want to go see like what all the cards look like and read all the cards again yourself, the Silent Art did post all of them in the announcements channel, under a spoiler tag, so like you can click on each one individually, read it, and see what you think. And there's a couple more cards that were revealed like earlier this week in there, and it's probably just in general, if you're interested in news regarding GA, you should probably be in the main Discord following the announcements channel. It's the best place to find all the news. But let's move on from spoiler season here, and let's talk about some meta stuff.
Yeah. So our gaming Discord, if you want to play and you're in the US or Canada, please follow the link in the description. We do events every Thursday, but this one was 3 entire event kits. And we had, do you remember how many people we had? Was it 38?
I believe it was 38 or 39 was I think the number, but it was big.
In 38 players, we average about 25 every week. But, we had two decks go undefeated. We do 4 rounds, so we had two decks go 4-0. And one was a Filer in deck by Kaban, and one was a Windler deck by Jimmy.
Yep. I think across the board. So we'll post these links to the builds in the description, and also there's a full like tournament breakdown on luxerasmap.com. So I'll post a link over to that as well, so you can see sort of like what the general spread of the field looked like. Both of them were playing very similar like styles of decks, just using different engines. Um, both of them were maining on Soul, playing like heavy Ascension, heavy Cruxite just to find their combo pieces, and then like a lot of good allies. I think they were leaning into the fact that like on Soul plus Banner Knight is very powerful, and it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of damage. Um, yeah, well, I mean, anything like specific stick out to you in either of these lists as like being like crazy cool or innovative?
I thought it was very interesting in Kaban's list that they're only on 3 Unsol, even though they are, you know, pretty much strictly an Unsol deck. They're playing Lorraine Crux Knight to get that advantage for Gallia weapon. They're playing 6 swords, one of them being Sword of Avarice. So their sideboard's really geared towards that. But I think the big thing, they play their 2 Banner Knights. They play Varuk, which was really interesting to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that was simply because they were expecting to see like Wind Lorraines and stuff, and they really didn't want to get Veiling Breeze for their Rending Flames and Devastating Blows,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah,
I
I
think is
think Varuk is a card that I like more and more in the main board for Fire Lorraine, and also like maybe even like Fire like Ally Rush. Specifically for like depending on how popular Wind Lorraine is. And I think in these Discord tournaments, like Jimmy is a Wind Lorraine grinder, and he's very good at the deck. He's very very proficient at Wind Lorraine. He's one of the best players. So I think Cabana's like, I know there's going to be a very good Wind Lorraine that I might play against him. I think that is like the best matchup for Varuk. So he's maining 2, sided a third one just to be able to see it more. Great to make sure your damage goes through whenever you like actually try to combo off.
yeah, because the idea kind of is like when Lorraine, especially if they're not playing Infusion, they're either trying to insult you themselves, or they are trying to or they're trying to infuse you, or they're trying to rush you with a lot of allies. So a strategy you have with this deck is like you on Soul. They either have to Veiling, or they're going to take a lot of damage because they're not fire swords. And after that happens, you can clear their board of allies because you're still hitting pretty hard with your swords.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get like you've either eaten a Veiling Breeze and they need a second one for your Rending Flames because all of a sudden your Rending Flames is doing 16 damage. Or you have Varuk and they literally just can't stop.
Yeah, and I think like it's important to note about Veiling Breeze is that it only protects your champion from the damage. So if you play in Soul and they Veiling for like 4 or 5 or however much that like supposedly blanks your and Soul, you can still attack with all of the swords into whatever is on their board. And like you don't really like they can't retaliate against the swords because they don't have a health bar. So you could just like kill their whole board, and then you just use Cruxite on the next turn to get your Soul back, or use Cruxite, pre-recollection or something, get your Soul back, and just be like, I'm gonna do it again next turn, and you have to Veiling me for 5 again, or like you said, you just play a Varuk, and then you like have all your banished swords, and then you go, Rending Flames for 3 plus my 7 damage buffed by Lorraine, so it's 10 doubled to 20. GG. Like that's pretty, just playing a Rending Flames after you've ensouled. It doesn't really matter if the ensol like did much work. Your Rending Flames is going to do a ton of damage.
Yeah. Let's talk about Caban's list. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's either Cabin or Caban. He said it so many times before, and I just have in my head how to pronounce it, and I think I'm right. But apologies if I'm wrong. But yeah, so Jimmy, now we're just talk about his Wind Lorraine list because he also went 4-0. And it's a very interesting one. It's a very somewhat non-conforming list. So one thing about the webcam weekly is it's very heavy Lorraine.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of, like, I don't want to say there's not a whole lot of Fire Eye, but a lot of them are sometimes just suboptimal, and a lot of them are just, if you get if you can get out of the bracket.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are playing the cool Turbo Fire Eye or the cool Turbo Wind Eye that you could find at lexarismac.com, written by a really good writer who is me.
Yeah.
But Jimmy's win list is very interesting because it's kind of what you expect from win list. It's got 4 Unsoul, you got 4 Ascension, you got 4 Cruxite, which I think are just necessities. No Infusion, 2 Spirits Blessing, which is very interesting. It's not something I usually see a lot in lists without Infusion, but they're playing Lorraine Crux Knight, so after they unsoul, they can get 2 attacks off with Spirit Blessing, and like
Yeah.
they're pumped up Lorraine if they want. There's an
Mhm.
option for that. It does a lot. Um, the really interesting thing here is they do not have a single Families captain in the main board, which
Mhm.
to me really says I'm avoiding Fire Right.
Yeah, right. Like you definitely really want that card in the main board. So he's playing 4 of them in the sideboard, which is like,
One
again, presumably for like the arcane matchup, any arcane right. You really want to be able to have powerful allies down early. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, not playing it because I think like I've played a little bit of Windler, and I think when I was testing around with this build, I was like, I actually don't like having all of the allies all the time. Like sometimes I'm like, I really wish these phalanx captains were anything else because if you don't need the extra couple damage right away, you're like, I could use some other cards. So I think like kind of looking at the field and being like, I'm probably not going to play against many arcane decks. I'll just put these in my sideboard just in case, and I'm just gonna like dedicate my main board to having more like powerful tools. I think like the one that I see right now that I'm looking at that isn't always in the lists is Zephyr. That one is in and out of the list, but I think that's really good in some of the Lorraine mirrors when if they're trying to infuse up a sword to big numbers, you can bounce it. Yeah, no, I really like his list. And like you were saying, like Spirit's Blessing just with Lorraine Crux Knight, like after using Soul, you could just attack for, like 8 damage and then attack for another 8 damage after you wake yourself back up. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and you can even do that with on your if you have the cards for it on your Unsoul turn.
Yep.
You just Warrior's Longsword up and just 3, 4, 5 because he's playing Ornamental Greatsword in Drawn Blood because he's not playing Dispersion.
Mhm.
So he wants them to die.
Yeah, you're playing all of the 1 durability swords rather than the high durability swords.
Yeah, because those by itself, let's say Sword of Avarice isn't gone, or let's say it is gone. But that's a lot of damage for your song. So that's an
Yeah,
extra,
you're
5,
you're
or
pushing
an
really
extra
hard. Yeah,
3
yeah. It's
because
it's a
you
lot of
can't
damage.
Longsword by itself.
I think the biggest takeaway that I have from looking at these two 4-0 decks is that right away when they announced the level up rule change, there were a lot of people that were like, "Oh my god, Lorraine is dead. My deck is dead. It's unplayable now that they've nerfed it so bad. It's not playable." It's like, no, it's very playable. Lorraine is still very good. Still topping like large events. It's just like some of the combos are a little bit less like cut and dry. You have to like gear your game plan a little bit more towards Soul, I think, than just Ascension stuff. But like obviously when piloted well, which these two players absolutely did, you have potential to sweep whatever you're up against. So all the Lorraine stands out there, like rest assured your deck is still very playable.
Yeah, yeah, it just is. Um, yeah, no, I think that's all I have to say. I think these lists are definitely built into not necessarily Rydex, and I think they're both built into as if they're going to face a lot of Lorraine, and I think they both faced a good amount of Lorraine.
Yeah, and that's that just speaks to the player's ability to sort of like predict the meta that they're going to go up into and build their deck accordingly, rather than just like taking a straight list that they either just had or they found, and there's like, this'll do. They're like, they take the list, they look at it, they're like, well, I don't need these cards 'cause I'm not going to hit these matchups, and they tailor it accordingly. And that just speaks to the skill of the player. So like, kudos to them for their ability to sort of read into the field and adjust their lists accordingly.
Yeah, and yeah, they're fantastic players. So good on them. 4-0, easy.
Easy. I think Gabon did another video profile, so I'll link to that in the description so you can watch that if you want to see. I believe his thumbnail literally said "easy 4-0." So those are fighting words. So some of you guys who are playing the Discord tournament, you might have to try to calm his ego a bit, because he's beating you. He's done it twice in a row, and now he's saying it's easy. You're gonna take that?
Hey, until he's dethroned. Let's go.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I think that's what we have for meta stuff. And I think that's kind of just like what we have in general for this week.
Yeah, I didn't want to go over a lot of market stuff because I assumed a lot of our time would be taken up with spoilers, and
And it was.
and talking about the decks. But the market settling is pretty easy to see. At the same time, promos and stuff are so expensive. There's still a lot of demand for everything. But I'm really excited to see how Set 2, especially once all of it's out, once it's on TCG Player, once we can get pre-orders for up at YetiGaming.com, what those prices will look like and how that will affect Set 1 prices as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of YetiGaming.com, if you are interested in playing in the regional being hosted at Yeti Gaming on August 12th, you can register online at Yeti Gaming. We'll have a link to that in the description as well. It's looking like it's gonna be a really, really fun event. There's so far a really high turnout. We still have more spots though, so like absolutely sign up for that. And then also on July 30th, Yeti was actually approved to host our store championship for the Dawn of Ashes season. So we're gonna be doing that right away at the beginning of the season. We don't have registration up for that quite yet, but we're working on getting that out soon. We'll get all the details sort of finalized and out as soon as we can. But we're really excited about that as well.
Yeah, hope to see people there.
Yeah, people hope to see people there, people ready to compete and do all their stuff. Or hope to not see people there because Andy wants the first place qualifier card. So,
Oh, I just realized because I'm not a Yeti, I don't have it. But I got
yes.
an ambassador promo.
Yes.
Oh, I'm really embarrassed that I don't have it on me, but I did get an ambassador package from Grand Archive. So thank you, devs. I got a Banner Knight playmat. I got a Banner Knight promo that I actually played with at our local on Saturday.
This man,
I dropped it on the floor.
He got his package. He was so excited to flex that he changed his deck for the weekend. He gave away the deck that he just wrote an article about for someone else to try out. He was like, I'm going to play this Banner Knight because I want to flex on all these people as I stomp on them with Wind Lorraine.
Yeah. I lost to it. I lost to another Wind Lorraine because Patrick is really, really good. But I did it. Next week I'll throw it on screen. I'll probably post it in Discord, but I'm really happy. Thank you, Debs, for giving me that and 3 Sylvie coins for the Siladar dunk tank.
The what? Spoiler.
So in the ambassador package, we got 3 Sylvie coins, and they're supposed to be used at Ascent for some vending machine randomly in the venue. And my hope is that it redeems for a ball that you can throw to the Siladar dunk tank, where you can dunk him in the water.
That's great. I sincerely hope that is a real thing that absolutely happens.
I think it'd be fun.
All right. I think that is all from us, all that we got this week. Thank you all for tuning in. It was a little bit of a long one today, but we had a lot of really cool stuff to cover. So I hope you stuck it out and listened to everything. And I hope you have a lovely week.
Yep. Thanks for being here. See you next week.
See ya.